What happens when Hollywood royalty meets daytime television and the cameras keep rolling as everything falls apart? It only took 37 seconds for one comment to completely destroy what was supposed to be a friendly chat and turn it into the most explosive meltdown in talk show history. Kelly Clarkson sat in her signature bright studio, her warm smile lighting up the set as she prepared for what should have been another routine celebrity interview. The audience was buzzing with excitement, phones out and ready to capture every moment of what they thought would be a pleasant conversation with one of the most talked about women in the world. Please welcome my next guest, Kelly announced with her usual enthusiasm. Meghan Markle. The applause was thunderous as Meghan walked onto the set, waving to the crowd with practiced precision. She wore an expensive-looking cream-colored blazer and carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from years in the spotlight. But something felt different today. There was a tension in her shoulders, a sharpness in her smile that the cameras picked up immediately. "Welcome to the show," Kelly said as they both took their seats. "Thank you so much for being here. I know you have a lot going on." "Thank you for having me," Meghan replied, but her voice carried an edge that made Kelly's eyebrows raise slightly. "Though I have to say, I was expecting a bit more preparation from your team." Kelly paused, clearly caught off guard by the unexpected criticism right out of the gate. "Oh, I'm sorry. Was there something specific you needed that we missed?" "Well, for starters," Meghan continued, settling back in her chair like she owned the place, "the green room was completely inadequate. The water was room temperature, not chilled as requested, and there were no organic options for the snack tray." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the warm, friendly conversation they had come to see. Kelly, ever the professional, tried to smooth things over with a laugh. "Well, I apologize about that. You know how these things can be sometimes. But hey, we're here now, and that's what matters, right?" Meghan's smile looked more like a grimace. "I suppose, though I do think it's important to set proper standards. When you're dealing with someone of my caliber, attention to detail really matters." Kelly blinked slowly, processing what she had just heard. Someone of her caliber? The phrase hung in the air like a bad smell. The audience was dead silent now, sensing that something was going very wrong very quickly. "Absolutely," Kelly said, her voice still friendly but with a slight strain creeping in. "So let's talk about your recent projects. I know our viewers are excited to hear what you've been working on." "Actually," Meghan interrupted, holding up one perfectly manicured hand. "Before we get into that, I need to address something. Your introduction was completely underwhelming. I sent over specific talking points about my accomplishments in humanitarian work, and you barely touched on any of it." Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment before she caught herself. "I'm sorry. I thought we covered the main highlights. Would you like to tell us more about your work?" "That's not the point," Meghan snapped, her voice rising slightly. "The point is that I took time out of my incredibly busy schedule to be here, and the least you could do is present me properly to your audience." Now Kelly was starting to look genuinely confused and a little hurt. This was her show, her house, and she was being lectured like a child who had forgotten to do her homework. "Meghan, I really didn't mean any disrespect," Kelly said carefully. "We always try our best to represent our guests in the most positive light possible." "Try your best?" Meghan let out a sharp laugh that had zero humor in it. "Kelly, I've been on some of the biggest shows in the world. I know what proper treatment looks like, and this isn't it." The audience was completely silent now, like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. Kelly's face was flushed, but she was still trying to maintain her composure, still trying to salvage what was left of the interview. "I understand you have high standards," Kelly said, her voice very measured now. "But maybe we could focus on the positive things you want to share with our viewers today?" "High standards?" Meghan repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. "Kelly, this isn't about high standards. This is about basic respect and professionalism. Something that seems to be lacking here." Kelly sat back in her chair, and for the first time since the interview began, she looked genuinely angry. Her famous warmth was nowhere to be found, replaced by something much colder and more dangerous. "You know what, Meghan?" Kelly said, her voice steady but with an unmistakable steel beneath it. "I've been doing this for a long time. I've interviewed presidents, movie stars, musicians, and regular people with extraordinary stories. And I've never had anyone come onto my show and speak to me the way you're speaking to me right now." Meghan's eyes widened slightly, like she couldn't believe Kelly was pushing back. She was clearly used to people bending over backward to accommodate her every whim and complaint. "Excuse me?" Meghan said, her voice going up an octave. "Are you seriously trying to lecture me right now?" "I'm not lecturing anyone," Kelly replied firmly. "I'm just stating a fact. You came on my show, in my studio, and you've done nothing but complain since you sat down." The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of what was quickly becoming the most uncomfortable interview in television history. The audience could feel the shift in the room like a thunderstorm rolling in. Kelly Clarkson, America's sweetheart, had just drawn a line in the sand, and Meghan Markle was about to find out what happens when you push someone too far on their own show. "Complain?" Meghan's voice cracked with indignation. "Kelly, I am simply trying to maintain professional standards. Maybe that's something you're not used to dealing with on this level." Kelly's jaw tightened visibly. The camera zoomed in, catching every micro-expression as she processed what had just been said to her. The implication was clear. Meghan was suggesting that Kelly and her show weren't operating at her level. "On this level?" Kelly repeated slowly, like she was tasting the words and finding them bitter. "Meghan, what level do you think you're on exactly?" Meghan straightened in her chair, lifting her chin with the kind of arrogance that made the audience collectively cringe. "I think we both know the answer to that question. I've been featured on the cover of every major magazine. I've worked with the biggest names in entertainment, and I've been part of one of the most famous families in the world. And I've sold over 25 million albums worldwide and won 3 Grammy Awards." Kelly shot back, her voice getting stronger with each word. "But you don't see me coming onto other people's shows and acting like I'm doing them a favor just by breathing their air." The audience let out a collective gasp. Kelly Clarkson, known for her kindness and humility, was not backing down. She was fighting back, and it was glorious to watch. Meghan's face went pale, then flushed red. She clearly hadn't expected this level of pushback. "That's completely different, and you know it. Your situation and mine aren't even comparable." "You're right," Kelly said, her voice dripping with sarcasm now. "They're not comparable. Because when I walk into someone else's house, I remember my manners." The burn was so severe that even the camera operators could be heard shifting behind their equipment. This was no longer an interview. This was a full-scale confrontation, and Kelly was winning. "My manners?" Meghan sputtered, her composure completely gone now. "Kelly, I don't think you understand who you're talking to here. I have connections and influence that could make or break careers in this industry." Kelly laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that could freeze fire. "Are you threatening me? On my own show? In front of my audience?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Meghan said quickly, but her voice wavered. "I'm simply pointing out that respect goes both ways, and right now, I'm not feeling very respected." "Respect?" Kelly stood up from her chair, towering over her seated guest. "Meghan, you walked onto my set, insulted my team, criticized my introduction, questioned my professionalism, and suggested that my show isn't good enough for you. And you want to talk to me about respect?" The audience started to murmur among themselves. Some were pulling out their phones to record, others were just staring in shock. This was reality television, at its most raw and unfiltered, except it wasn't scripted and it wasn't fake. Meghan looked around the room like she was just realizing where she was and what was happening. The audience that had applauded her entrance was now looking at her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. "Kelly, I think you're overreacting," Meghan said, but her voice was smaller now, less confident. "I was just trying to provide some feedback to help improve the show." "Help improve the show?" Kelly's voice went up several decibels. "The show that's been on the air for years and has won multiple awards? The show that millions of people watch every single day? That show needs your help?" Meghan shifted uncomfortably in her seat, finally seeming to understand that she had made a massive miscalculation. "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it then?" Kelly demanded, crossing her arms over her chest. "Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you came here with the intention of putting me and my team down to make yourself feel bigger." "That's not true," Meghan protested, but her voice lacked conviction now. "I just have certain expectations when I do interviews." "Expectations are one thing," Kelly said, her voice getting calmer but somehow more dangerous. "Entitlement is something else entirely, and what you've shown here today is pure entitlement." The word hung in the air like a verdict. Entitlement. It was the perfect description of everything that had happened since Meghan walked through the door. "I am not entitled," Meghan said, but even she didn't sound convinced. "I work very hard for everything I have." "So does everyone else," Kelly replied. "But most people manage to do it without treating other people like servants." Meghan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She was clearly scrambling for something to say, some way to regain control of the situation, but Kelly wasn't giving her any room to breathe. "You know what the really sad part is?" Kelly continued. sitting back down but keeping her eyes locked on Meghan's face. "I was actually excited to meet you. I thought we were going to have a great conversation about your projects and your experiences. Instead, you've spent the entire time trying to prove that you're better than everyone else in this room." Meghan's eyes started to glisten with what might have been tears, but it was hard to tell if they were tears of shame or anger. "Kelly, you don't understand the pressure I'm under, the scrutiny, the expectations." "I don't understand pressure?" Kelly's eyebrows shot up to her hairline. "Meghan, I started on American Idol when I was 20 years old. I've been in this business for over 2 decades. I know exactly what pressure feels like." "But you don't know what it's like to be me," Meghan insisted, her voice getting desperate now. "The level of attention, the way every move I make gets analyzed and criticized. And that gives you the right to take it out on innocent people?" Kelly asked pointedly. "My production assistants, my makeup team, my stage crew, they didn't do anything to deserve the way you've treated them today." Meghan looked genuinely shocked, like it had never occurred to her that her behavior affected other people. "I wasn't taking anything out on anyone." "Really?" Kelly pulled out her phone and started reading from it. "Because my stage manager just texted me that you made 3 different people cry backstage before we even started filming." The silence that followed Kelly's revelation was deafening. 3 people. 3 innocent crew members had been reduced to tears before the cameras even started rolling. And now everyone in that studio knew exactly what kind of person they were dealing with. Meghan's face went through a rainbow of emotions in the span of about 5 seconds. Shock, denial, anger, and finally something that looked like panic. "That's not, I didn't mean to. They were just being so unprofessional." "Unprofessional?" Kelly's voice was ice cold now. "Sarah has been doing makeup for 15 years. Miguel has been running audio for this show since day one. And Jessica, who you apparently screamed at about the lighting, is 6 months pregnant and was just trying to make sure you look good on camera." Each revelation hit like a physical blow. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a reckoning. Meghan tried to recover, but she was drowning now. "Kelly, you're taking this completely out of context. I was under a lot of stress, and sometimes when you're used to a certain level of excellence—" "Stop." Kelly held up her hand, cutting Meghan off mid-sentence. "Just stop talking, because every word that comes out of your mouth is making this worse." The command in Kelly's voice was absolute. This was no longer the sweet, bubbly talk show host that America knew and loved. This was a woman protecting her people, and she was not playing around. "You want to know what excellence looks like?" Kelly continued, standing up again. "Excellence is treating every single person you encounter with dignity and respect, regardless of their job title or their paycheck. Excellence is remembering that behind every service you receive is a human being with feelings and problems and dreams of their own." Meghan looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. The confidence and arrogance that had carried her through the first part of the interview were completely gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. "Excellence," Kelly went on, her voice building like a symphony reaching its crescendo, "is not making a 22-year-old production assistant question whether she's good enough at her job because some celebrity decided to have a bad day and take it out on her." The audience started to applaud, slowly at first, then building to a thunderous ovation. They were applauding not just Kelly's words, but her courage to stand up for people who couldn't defend themselves. Meghan looked around at the clapping audience with growing horror. This was supposed to be her moment, her platform, her stage. Instead, she was being publicly called out for behavior that she probably thought no one would ever talk about. "Kelly, please," Meghan said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we just take a break? Maybe start over?" "Start over?" Kelly shook her head slowly. "Meghan, you can't start over with people's feelings. You can't take back the tears you caused or the humiliation you put my team through. There's no reset button for basic human decency." The words hit their target with surgical precision. Meghan flinched like she'd been slapped, and for the first time since she'd walked onto that stage, she looked genuinely remorseful. "I didn't realize," she started to say, but Kelly wasn't finished. "You didn't realize because you didn't care to realize," Kelly said bluntly. "You were so focused on making sure everyone knew how important you are that you forgot the most important thing of all, being a decent person." Meghan's hands were shaking now. She clutched her purse like it was a life preserver, looking desperately around the room for someone, anyone, who might come to her rescue. But her own security team and handlers were standing against the wall, watching the disaster unfold with expressions that suggested they weren't entirely surprised by what they were seeing. "I think," Kelly said, her voice softer now but no less firm, "that this interview is over. "Kelly, wait," Meghan said, reaching out like she might actually grab Kelly's arm. "Please, let me explain. Let me apologize properly." Kelly stepped back, putting distance between herself and her guest. "Some things can't be explained away, Meghan, and some apologies come too late." The finality in Kelly's voice was unmistakable. This wasn't a pause or a commercial break. This was the end. "Security," Kelly called out, her voice carrying across the entire studio. "Please escort Miss Markle out of the building." The audience gasped. In all the years of daytime television, no one could remember a guest being physically removed from a talk show. This was unprecedented territory. Two security guards appeared as if by magic, professional and polite, but clearly not taking no for an answer. "Ma'am, if you could come with us, please." Meghan looked back at Kelly one last time, her eyes wide with something that might have been genuine regret or might have been just shock at facing consequences for her actions. "This isn't how I wanted this to go," Meghan said quietly. "No," Kelly replied, her voice sad now more than angry. "I don't suppose it is. But this is how it went, and that's on you." The security guards gently but firmly guided Meghan toward the exit. She didn't resist, but she did turn back once more as she reached the edge of the stage. "Kelly, for what it's worth, I really am sorry about your team." Kelly nodded once, acknowledging the apology without accepting it. "Tell them that, not me." And with that, Meghan Markle walked off the Kelly Clarkson show stage for the last time, leaving behind a studio full of people who had just witnessed something extraordinary. Not the kind of extraordinary that gets celebrated, but the kind that gets remembered as a cautionary tale about what happens when entitlement meets accountability. Kelly stood alone on her stage for a moment, watching the exit doors close. Then she turned back to her audience, her camera crew, her production team, the people who had watched her defend them without hesitation. "Well," she said, her famous smile returning slowly, "that's not exactly how we planned to spend our Thursday afternoon." The audience erupted in laughter and applause, the tension finally breaking like a fever. Kelly had won more than just an argument. She had won the respect of everyone in that room, and everyone who would eventually see this footage. "I guess that's all the time we have for today," Kelly said, looking directly into the camera. "Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind to each other. It really isn't that hard." The cameras stopped rolling, but the impact of what had just happened would echo far beyond the walls of that television studio. Sometimes the most important moments happen not because they were planned, but because someone finally decided that enough was enough.